It is the year 66, barely 30 years after the death of Christ. In the Holy Land, the Jews rise up against Rome, the greatest empire the Western world has ever known. 8 people will be leading players in a deadly drama known as the Jewish Revolt. First, the chronicler, Josephus. He betrays the Jews in battle, yet writes the only account of the conflict that has come down through time. Menachem, leader of assassins and saboteurs who terrorize their fellow Jews, only to end up dying in a desert fortress called Masada. Benjamin the Essene, from a peaceful desert monastery, he will sow the seeds of violent revolt through prophecy. The 2 daughters of Philip, lone survivors of their beloved city, Gamala. Did they witness mass slaughter or mass suicide? Yohanan ben Zakkai. With the end of Jerusalem in sight, he plans to save the Holy Scriptures and the entire future of his people. Finally, the dreaded enemy, Vespasian, and his son Titus, leaders of the unstoppable war machine, the Roman legions. Together, they intend to destroy the Holy Land. This is the stage for the last revolt, a war that will leave in its wake a river of blood. But how does the war begin? And what role do these people play in its unfolding drama? These are but a few of the mysteries of the Bible. The people of Israel. The people's expectation of a Messiah poses a dire threat to Vespasian and Titus. The single most important criterion for the awaited one is that he deliver Israel from all oppressors. Specifically, the Messiah is to crush Vespasian, Titus, and imperial Rome itself. Throughout Roman occupation, many Jewish leaders claim identity as the Messiah, but most would simply pass from history. Then, 35 years before the revolt, one man in particular is referred to by that term. His name, Jesus of Nazareth. His life will inspire millions of followers. But did he also inspire revolution?
Jesus is seen by the Romans and by these powerful Jews as someone who would undo the system, whose, if you follow this path, it'll lead to the overthrow of Roman rule. And it's that charge that he's crucified on.
Crucifixion is the most severe form of execution, typically meted out to rebels. But why the Romans crucified Jesus is a question that still plagues scholars to this day.
Periodically, the Roman emperors kicked the philosophers out of Rome who were criticizing too much and too deeply. They very seldom crucified them or even killed them. They just exiled them or ran them out of town. It's deeds that got you killed in the Roman world. So somehow Jesus was not only talking, he was doing something.
What was Jesus doing that so angered the authorities? On that question, the Bible is strangely silent.
And it's one that's very hard to answer from the sources that we have available, because those sources have no interest in that question. They simply see this as an act of God, as a plan of God, and aren't interested in what might have motivated the Romans.
In trying to overthrow Roman rule, Jewish freedom fighters, most of whom are known as zealots, will be crucified by the thousands. But the spirit of revolution has gripped the nation. Nothing will quell the people's hunger for freedom. Revolt against the awesome might of Rome is a terrifying proposition. At stake, the very survival of an entire nation.
Since we resolved never to be servants to the Romans, nor to any other than God, the time is now come to make that resolution true. Josephus, The Jewish Wars.
These are the words of the Sicarii rebels. The Sicarii, the most fanatical, ruthless, and terrifying Jewish sect in the revolt. For his entire life, Menachem, leader of the Sicarii, has been waiting for the Jews to rise up against their Roman conquerors. His grandfather, his father, and 2 brothers have all been killed by the Romans. He is consumed by hatred for the empire. In the year 66, the revolt begins. It will last 7 bitter years. In 67, the Romans attack the northern cities of Gamala and Jotapata in the Galilee. 2 years later, in 69, they assault the town of Qumran. Jerusalem is attacked in the year 70. The revolt finally ends at a fortress called Masada in 73. Menachem and the Sicarii do not trigger the revolt that begins in Jerusalem. Instead, this is the work of the man who will later become Menachem's mortal enemy, an official in Jerusalem's holy temple by the name of Eleazar. But in the face of such a powerful occupying force, one question remains a great mystery. Why didn't the Jews unite against Rome?
What's interesting is that at nowhere in the record does Sicarii ever kill Romans. At no point in the historical record does Sicarii fight Romans. Their targets of their anger are their fellow Jews, who from their perspective are collaborators, are wicked, are impious, or are people who need to be destroyed.
The spark for the Jewish revolt comes from Eleazar, the temple official, under provocation from a Roman governor named Florus. The governor's reputation for corruption is unparalleled.
No one ever had less use for truth or thought out more subtle methods of crime than Florus. Making a profit out of individuals he considered poor sport, he stripped whole cities. Josephus, The Jewish Wars.
Florus journeys to the Holy Temple, claiming that the Jews owe Rome a tribute. When the crowd there mocks him, he orders the priests of the temple whipped and humiliated. Eleazar, the temple official, demands retaliation. He bans any further animal sacrifices on behalf of the Roman Emperor Nero. To the Romans, this seemingly insignificant decree is seen as an act of war.
To cease sacrifices for Rome was a direct affront to Rome. So Nero and his lieutenants, the governor, would be utterly shocked at this, and they would look upon this as, in effect, a declaration of independence.
At about the same time as the revolt erupts in Jerusalem, other events around the world are shaping history.